Hello and welcome to the Al-Monitor Brief. It's Wednesday, July 3rd. I'm Kristen Tolman. Today's main segment is a conversation with Ezgi Akin, Al-Monitor's Turkey editor, on the recent events that started in Kayseri and have resulted in clashes between rebel-backed groups and Turkish forces in northwestern Syria, as well as other anti-refugee sentiment across Turkey. But first, let's get you caught up on the headlines. A senior Hezbollah commander was killed in an Israeli strike in southern Lebanon Wednesday as fears of an all-out war grow between the two sides. Hamas has provided new feedback to the Israeli ceasefire proposal intended to close the gap between the two sides. An official in the Palestinian militant group confirmed to Al-Monitor. Israel is reportedly evaluating the new Hamas, quote, ideas on halting the Gaza war. And less than a week before his planned travel to the NATO summit in Washington, Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin met in Astana on Wednesday and reaffirmed their commitment to bilateral ties as well as increasing cooperation in Syria. Now, on to the main segment. Hey, Ezgi, welcome to the Al-Monitor Brief.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So, Ezgi, it's been a whirlwind of a week in Syria-Turkey relations. And to start, just this morning, Erdogan met today with Putin, which on the face of it is significant because Erdogan will be at the NATO summit next week. But they also discussed Turkey-Syria relations, which have seen significant developments in the past few days. Can you talk us through what has happened since Sunday and what the Putin-Erdogan dialogue entailed?
Of course, Kristen, as you know, both Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Syrian President Bashar al-Assad expressed their openness for the resumption of the high-level dialogue between their countries last week. And the Russian-mediated talks launched in 2022 failed, and this time Iraq seems to be mediating between the two capitals. But Russia also says it is supporting the resumption of the talks. But for those who are watching the Syria file, the issue took a different turn on Sunday night. Everything started after some residents in Turkey's central province of Kayseri caught a Syrian national while allegedly abusing a minor girl. And they turned him over to the Turkish authorities. The man was arrested, but the incident ignited a riot in at least 3 or 4 neighborhoods of the province. Hundreds, if not thousands, took to the streets, chanting slogans against Syrians, racist slogans in some instances, as well as against the Turkish government, which they blamed for some 2.3 million registered Syrians living in Turkey. And some among this angry crowd set on fire dozens of Syrian-owned shops. Turkish officials detained dozens of people for the riots on Monday morning, and the life largely turned to normal in Kayseri.
Okay, so first of all, there's a significant number, millions of refugees, Syrian refugees that live in Turkey because of that goes all the way back to 2016. Reeling it back to last week, Turkey and the Assad regime agreed to talks mediated by Iraq. And then on Sunday, because one Syrian was accused of a crime, it led to this resurgence, right, of this maybe brewing tension, but then taking to the streets. Okay, what happened next?
What happened next was, as the life was largely turning to normal in Kayseri and broader Turkey on Monday, Telegram channels close to Syrian armed opposition groups fight against Assad began sharing videos of mass anti-Turkey demonstrations in parts of northern Syria. These areas are under the control of the Turkish-backed rebels. For example, in Afrin, the demonstration took a violent turn with unprecedented armed clashes breaking out between Turkish forces and armed protesters. And the clashes also reportedly caused some fatalities as well. Protests in Syria, in northern Syria, anti-Turkey protests in northern Syria was triggered by Kayseri, as some Arabic social media accounts shared hundreds of posts of the riots in the province. But it was also likely a manifestation of some anger, which has been already brewing since last week after Turkish President Erdogan and Assad signaled positive messages over the possibility of resumption of high-level talks between Ankara and Damascus. Turkey has been backing Syrian opposition groups since the armed conflict between the Syrian government and rebels. But in 2022, Ankara turned to Russia and other regional countries to mend its ties with Damascus, and the Russian-mediated direct talks that broke up without a breakthrough at the time, by the way, also created backlash from the Syria's rebel-held areas. We have seen similar anti-Turkey protests back then. What makes this week protests significant was the armed clashes between the Turkish forces and demonstrators.
Okay, and just to wrap my head geographically around this. So Kayseri is a city in sort of central Anatolia, right? Central Turkey. And that was the first location on Sunday. And then it spread to Afrin, which is in northwest Syria, on Monday. Correct?
Exactly.
Okay. And is that it? Is that all? Was it sorted by Monday evening?
Unfortunately not. After these videos, these anti-Turkey demonstration videos came out on social media, Monday night, anti-immigrant riots in Turkey spread to Turkey's other provinces, including Istanbul. In some unconfirmed videos, protesters were seen attacking on Syrians in Turkey's southeastern province of Hatay along the Syrian border. And in Istanbul, a knife-wielding man is seen threatening Arab tourists sitting at a cafe. He was later detained, by the way. And eventually, Turkey detained nearly 500 people over these incidents. And eventually, Turkey detained nearly 500 people over these incidents since Sunday.
And who they're detaining is mostly Turkish people that are, or who are they detaining?
They are detaining people who Turkish police believe is behind of these incidents, quote unquote provocators of these incidents. And also, of course, those who attack personally on Syrians.
So I think you've caught us up to date, right? We're recording on Wednesday. What is the situation as it stands now?
So addressing both riots in Turkey and anti-Turkey demonstrations in Syria on Tuesday, Erdogan said Turkey will not allow any kind of targeting of Syrians living in Turkey, but also said that it took necessary measures to prevent such demonstrations took place in northern Syria, meaning armed clashes probably, and also some images. Also in some videos we saw the Turkish flag is vandalized by Syrian demonstrators, and for the majority of the Turkish society, flag is something sacred, and the videos created a huge backlash because of that. And then he traveled to the Kazakh capital of Astana today to meet with Putin, as you said. The two leaders discussed Syria, according to the readouts of the both meetings. So we will now follow whether the high-level dialogue between Ankara and Damascus will resume or not, even the events over the past week.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it strikes me that last week when there was an announcement that talks would resume or there would be some normalization, maybe that's too strong of a word, there would be there was growing potential ties between the Assad regime and Turkey. It seemed like it resulted in what's happened over the past week. Do you think there's not a willingness from people, or what, or do you think there'll be hesitation from the political parties to move dialogue forward if it results in such a backlash?
Great question. As I mentioned earlier, Turkey has been backing these Syrian armed groups since the beginning of the Syrian civil war, and these armed groups are the enemy number one of the Syria's President Assad. So we have seen similar protests in 2022 as well, when Russian-mediated talks between the two capitals were launched. But inside Turkey, actually, main opposition party, Republican People's Party, is supporting these talks with Assad. These talks with Assad to resume, because they argue that this is the only way. This is the only way to ensure the return of some of the Syrians who escaped Turkey after the war.
Okay, so politically, it seems like there's will, but maybe for the rebel-backed groups in northwest Syria, it puts them in a vulnerable position, and then there's just tension in Turkish society with the high level of Syrian refugees. Is that a correct characterization?
Exactly. I mean, we know that Turkey is home to 3.2 million registered Syrian refugees, but we don't know the number of unregistered Syrians living in country. And also, since Turkey is located on a major migration route, hundreds of people, perhaps thousands of people who have been escaping Afghanistan, Taliban regime, also traveling to the country in hope of pursuing a better life in Europe.
Yeah, and that's a crunch, probably. I mean, I'd be remiss not to mention just the economic strain in Turkey. And so I think there's just tension both internally, and then that at times of economic uncertainty and can ripple down, unfortunately, to many other groups. So, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, economic crisis is always, Turkey is having one of the most acute cost of the living crisis in its near history. And as you mentioned, all over the world, when economy goes down, anti-refugee, anti-immigrant sentiments goes up.
Exactly. Yeah. Ezgi, thank you so much. We will be sure to stay in touch. I know you're watching these developments very closely. So for our listeners, you can read and follow all of Ezgi's pieces at allmonitor.com.
Thank you.
That's it for today, July 3rd. You can tune back in on Friday for the next segment. But in the meantime, do make sure to read the stories and stay up to date on what's happening in the region at allmonitor.com.